Hey, everybody. My name is Zakk with Realize the Market, and you're tuned into the Think the Realize the Market podcast. Our goal is to connect with entrepreneurs by providing a platform to help others through their experiences. Today, we'll discuss sales and growing an organization using creative problem solving with our guest, Jeramie Parsons. Jeramie is a highly accomplished sales leader responsible for increasing revenue by a factor of 5 to 10x through revenue operations and architecture and leadership up to the IPO level. His extensive experience in running global sales operations, process management, and digital innovation provide him with the knowledge and skills necessary to provide top-tier solutions to the world's most disruptive companies. Thanks for joining us, Jeramie.
Happy to do it.
How's it going, man? So, we know you a little bit, but to the people who aren't listening, that was just the briefest introduction to a broad set of skills and talents and just everything that you possess. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about who you are?
Sure. So essentially, I'm a superhero. By day, I'm just a mild-mannered salesman. Well, really, the top salesman in my organization. A multi-billion-dollar business process outsourcing firm. But by night, I'm a husband, father of 4, recent MBA graduate, aspiring author, which is impressive because I can't really read, and I dabble in entrepreneurship a little bit.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. You definitely have a beautiful foundation that you've built for yourself over the years. A beautiful family, a very, very wide skill set. So, juggling all of those things that you just mentioned, it takes a lot of motivation to continue pushing forward and learning new things every day, especially when you're raising a family and working with a growing company. So, what are some things that motivate you whenever times might get tough with your family or with work? Like, there's a lot on your plate.
Sure. I'm going to start from a general standpoint, and it starts with why. Have you ever read the book by Simon Sinek, Start With Why?
Yes, I haven't.
All right, so one of you's cool. Just kidding. I'm not going to say which one, but it's a great book, and it boils down to start every goal, task, whatever it is, with why you're doing it. It helps prioritize nonsensical tasks, right? If the why doesn't exist, don't bother with it, but also put the why at its core. So for me, it's building a better life for myself, for my family, for my friends, for my children. And I know that sounds kind of selfish, but we all matter. Mm-hmm. And it's why we get out of bed, right? We want to make a name for ourselves. We want to be in the history books. We want to just be. Mm-hmm. It starts with the why. Right. So keeping myself motivated is remember why I'm doing it.
Yeah. What is your why?
I just told you. So it's building a better life for my family, changing our stars essentially, right? I came from humble beginnings and had no idea what a glass ceiling was, so it didn't ever stop me. I just figured out I could do things.
So have you ever thought about something like a little bit further than, your just family and kind of your legacy and how you can leave an impact on the earth? Does your whys go that far?
Believe it or not, they do. And if you want to dive into the 2 books I'm working on right now, so one of them is primarily being offered by my brother. My dad and I are heavily involved because it's kind of like a family practice. And then the book that I'm writing is also, I kind of want to change the way people think, which is the biggest thing. And
it's a good thing to do.
So the first book we're working on is called Internal Dialogue. Okay. And this is my brother's concept that we're all helping him work on, so I don't want to take credit for it. Right. So it'll be out soon, so when you get a chance, Internal Dialogue by Jeramie Parsons. Wow. Not a plug.
Okay. It's okay. Plug it.
But
plug it in.
But you asked.
Absolutely.
And I'll answer. Yeah. So essentially, everything we do starts in our head, right? We live our entire lives in our head. Like, why not make it a great place to be? Yep. So everything you've done, anything that's happened to you, like you had an influence and impact on that action, right? And the better you talk to yourself, the better your life's going to be, right? If you tell yourself, like, I'm a loser, I can't do that, you're right. Yeah. If you tell yourself, I'm a winner, I can sell anything, I can start this company, you're right, you can.
For sure.
And that's genuinely the only difference. And I mean, we dive a lot deeper into those concepts in the book, having a founding set of principles for making decisions. And we kind of tell our story of when it turned around for us. For him, it was really young. For me, it was actually fairly recently, like within the last 5 years, that I changed how I talk to myself, and I stopped letting everyone's like external narrative or dialogue affect like how I view and talk to myself. And the second it did, like everything in my life got better. Like I don't want to say I just got more successful at work, which happened, but I also had a better relationship with my children, my parents, my brother, my friends, you know, my wife. All of it improved just by talking to myself differently.
Absolutely. Almost affirmations and confirmation that you're, you know, doing the right thing for yourself mentally.
Yeah, and I can kind of agree with you too. I think there was a lot of negative self-talk going on for me in my life before I was able to kind of get my mind on the right track. And that was one of the key things that I had to figure out for myself first was how do I stop letting so many negative influences into my mind to influence how I think, which in turn influences the decisions that I make. And whenever I came to that realization, then I started to have a better grasp on what I allow into my head. And, you know, sooner than later, my entire reality started to change just by controlling what comes into my head. And I would say that's a strength. You know, that's a strength that you develop over time. I don't think that's easy for anybody. So, and that's unique. So what other unique strengths, you know, do you carry, and how would they benefit you moving towards your why?
Let me understand that question a little better. So you want to talk about my unique strengths?
Yeah.
Well, for me, it's always been creative problem solving. Ever since I was a little kid, I've been able to see things differently than everyone else. I don't look at things as a whole, but rather the sum of their parts, right? So when I approach a problem, I'm not just looking at the problem, but what's led to the problem, what's going to be affected by that problem, and how we can come up with a solution that will not only work, but be elegant and a true solution, not just to the symptoms, but the cause. And that has really impacted me in business, right? I never started in sales. Like before 2020, I'd actually never sold anything in my entire life. But I ran sales ops, which was solving problems for salespeople, right?
Gotcha.
Procedurally, generally, and through, you know, the implementation of new systems and just removing obstacles both internally and externally, right? Prospecting tools and those sorts of things. So kind of being able to identify a problem. Like someone will come to you and say, I'm just going to give you a fun example, you know, my finger hurts. Well, you know, do you hand them a Tylenol, or do you go do an x-ray and see if it's broken, and then, you know what I mean, like fix the bone? It's works the same in business. You know, so someone says my sales are down,
Right.
you know, is the answer go hire new salespeople? Maybe not, but you got to look at it. Is it a problem? Is it a retention? Is it that you're just not targeting the right market? Like anything could happen, and you have to look at that problem holistically as the sum of its parts, not just the symptom.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing with problem solving, and most people, you know, look at a problem and they don't have the strength to adapt with it, and some people just let that problem kind of, you know, shadow them and never get to the point of fixing it because they feel like they don't have the answer. But the only way we get the answers for problems that we don't understand is by adapting and learning how to evolve into that answer. And sometimes people have to reach out for help to do that, and sometimes people can do that within themselves. So I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, no, that's big. Have you read the book The Obstacle is the Way? Because your answer is very in line with that book.
No, I don't think so.
I highly recommend it. Not plugging that one either. Certainly not written by anyone I know or love, but it's still a good book.
Right.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'll definitely put it on the list.
You know, some people from the outside looking in might see, you know, a high performer like yourself, you know, executing all the tasks that you do on a day-to-day basis and think that they might never be able to see themselves in that position. And I think a lot of that comes with like tapping into your potential and realizing what you're capable of as a person. And whenever you're confident in your capabilities of, you know, what you can accomplish, I think that starts to come out in a way that might make you almost seem like a superhero. So in a way, I feel like everybody possesses a superpower inside of them as long as they can tap into that potential.
Right.
And it seems like you've done that.
And I definitely agree with that outlook. You know, you look at the Avengers and the Super Friends, it's not a bunch of Iron Man or Superman, right? It's a team. Everyone's got their own superpower. They contribute and, you know, they save lives, or in this case, you know, make business awesome. Like not everyone can be a top salesman, but like I need operators, I need client service managers, I need all these things so that like my job is possible, because otherwise I don't have a product to sell. Like so everyone's superpower should be embraced.
Well, what's your superpower?
What's my superpower?
Yeah.
Aside from problem solving, because I would say it's problem solving, but I don't want to just say the same thing a bunch of times. I'm a pretty effective storyteller. which sounds kind of useless, but in sales, you're always telling a story. You're telling a story of your product, you're telling a story of the company, you're telling a story of your employees, like whatever it is. So I would say storytelling is a big one, and then active listening is another for what I do. Also huge because, and people won't be upfront with it, but essentially what I do is solve problems. And so you got to get to the root of them. So you ask them, what's going on in your business? Like what, not just what can I help you with, but what keeps you up at night? And then inversely, like, what's going to make you succeed? What's going to get you promoted in 6 to 12, to 18 months? And they'll tell you, and then you have to actively listen and figure out how your product offering can benefit it, or if not. And I'm happy to tell a prospect, like, hey, I can't help you, but I know this product or this service or whatever is going to be the best bet for you. I will actually direct people to my competition.
Right.
And more often than not, they won't go with them. They'll be like, you know what, I want to go with someone who just told me that.
Well, and it's being able to say those hard things and ask those hard questions that I think can make somebody a good listener or a good storyteller, is being able to extract information out of somebody and genuinely care about what they're saying. So I would definitely consider that a superpower, because that's something that's, even been hard for me over the years, and sometimes gets hard for me today. It's kind of intimidating to ask really hard questions where you're afraid to get an answer. And I think that the fear really comes from getting a denial, hearing no. And doing, what we do, or just in entrepreneurship in general, you're going to get, 1,000 no's before you get to that one yes. But I think it's that will to keep moving through those no's to get to that yes is what creates greatness.
Well, the funny thing is, it's not usually 1,000 no's to get to a yes, right? But that's the fear that lingers. Like, I don't want to hear no even once, let alone 1,000 times. And the funny thing is, you might not hear it at all. I mean, honestly, if you're not hearing no, you're not trying hard enough. I believe that deep down where I live. If your close rate is anywhere outside of like 20 to 40%, you're not trying hard enough.
Right.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I totally agree. And that's something that, we had to practice on within ourselves as an agency, and making sure that we were keeping our name at the forefront, because, we did have a high closing rate for quite some time. And the longer that, we pushed at it and getting more clients, that number started to come down. It's like, our efforts are going harder and faster, but our closing rate is going down. But that's just because we're reaching more people, talking to more people.
And that's also just one statistic, right? I bet your average deal size changed, right? When you're saying yes a lot, they're probably small deals.
Yes.
Right? But then you realize you're capable of more. So, like, frankly, I'm all about, a fewer big deals are going to move the number a lot further, the needle, sorry, not the number, than, a bunch of small ones. And so, like, yeah, your close rate might have changed, but I bet your average deal size, your deal duration, like all of those numbers improved.
Oh, yeah. Roughly like a 5X, honestly.
Came with patience, though, That's another superpower that I think is super important for people to try to work on and develop within themselves is patience.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think as a society, we are geared far too much towards instant gratification, and patience is going by the wayside.
Yeah. And it's circling back to what we were talking about earlier. Again, I think it's almost just as powerful what you say no to than it is what you say yes to, for that reason.
Yes. So, I mean, that is a real thing. And that's a sign of leadership potential, when you can say no to the right things. Totally. Like, saying no to everything is just as bad as saying yes to everything, but knowing when to say no, when to delegate, those are huge signs of a good leader.
So all this talk about, hearing no's and hearing 1,000 no's before you get to a yes, whatever that number looks like for you, what was that turning point, dealing with failure and dealing with denials, where you kind of said to yourself, I think I can do this. If I put my head down and focus, this is something that I can be good at.
That's actually a bit of a story. If you've got a minute, I'll tell it.
Yeah,
we got
time.
I actually tell this story in my brother's book because it was really pivotal. When I talked about, like, there was a huge change. It was about 5 years ago. I've known since I was in high school that I wanted to be in sales. Like, I kid you not, my one extracurricular activity was DECA, right? Distributed Education Club of America, which is essentially like sales and marketing. So, like, in high school, I was competing and actually winning at the regional and state, and competed at the national level for sales.
That's awesome.
So I was like selling fake printers to fake real estate companies in high school. So I always knew I wanted to do it. And I ended up getting like an internship in accounting and being kind of successful. So I was like really good with numbers and really good with spreadsheets. So I kind of went that way and started seeing success. So I kind of neglected that sales arm. And then in like 2014, I actually met my now mentor and the CCO of the company I work for. Amazing dude who was like the best sales leader I've ever met. I've always been like kind of sales adjacent, because I knew where that's where money was, and that's where I wanted to be. But I saw myself as an analytic because that's where I'd seen success, and people repeat what they've seen success. So I asked him, hey, I'd like to be in sales. And he's like, no. And I'm like, dude, like, we have a great relationship. Come on, like, I'll be good at it. And he's like, no, you're really good at what you do. And from my experience, I don't see people crossing that bridge ever. And so I let that external dialogue dictate it. So I went another 5 years just believing I could never do it and I wouldn't be any good at it, and just kept doing my thing. And then that same mentor brings in someone he had worked with before to do this like personality assessment for everyone in his organization. So we're talking like 200 people. I was in his organization, so I took the same test. And it was essentially to help us communicate better. And it you took these 3 personality tests that were really short and had like nothing to do with anything. And then it came back with this like who you are reading and categorized you in one of 4 categories. There was the EQ, the salesman, right? The person that cares about money and recognition, right? That's what drives a salesman. The next, there was like networker, which was like your typical account manager. They're extroverted, but they're more like peacekeepers and problem solvers, and they like want to make peace. And then like the biggest, like 55% of the population falls into the third category, which was like PD. That's like your engineers, your doer, the grinders of the world, And then the 4th category was kind of a rare one, which, by the way, Austin fell into as like you have a primary and a secondary of each of these categories. He was a double strategist, which is like your creatives. Like you need to be doing art, you need to be running board meetings. Like you are an idea person, not an executor. Like your head's in the cloud where it should be. So of those 4 categories, I was certain I was going to come back to the PD. Right? I'm an analytic. I'm a grinder. I really like hated my life, and I actually came back as like a super duper rare, is like 0.01% of the population fall into this category. And by the way, my mentor happened to be one of the people that fall into this category. And it was called a high KEQ. So my primary motivators were like off the charts for what salespeople are. Recognition and compensation. But then my third, which is way above average, was knowledge. And so the benefit to being a high KEQ is that you're not only a good salesman, but you get a lot of credibility with your buyers, who are usually PDs, because you can think like they think. But there was also like subcategories of the test, and I can actually show you. Like I can actually keep the results on a plasterboard. Like that's so important. It's like above my desk because it was so awesome. Pivotal, life changing. So I came back as a quintessential salesperson, and this guy, Marcus Harwood, goes to my mentor and it's like, "You're screwing up, dude. Like." Not having this guy in sales, you're leaving money on the table. A direct quote, put him in a room with 99 other sales people, he'll be number 1. Genuine quote. So like after that, I hired my replacement, and it's like, I'm moving into sales either for you or for somebody else, you pick. And we had a great relationship, and he's like, me. I pick me, and he moved me into sales.
I pick me. I pick me. I want you.
And that first year, which was 2020, and keep in mind, I had never sold as much as a popsicle. Like nothing in my entire life.
Real at least, because you were selling
selling fake printers, sure. And those fake buyers, man, they were real into it. I sold 3x my quota. I sold $8 million to a $3 million quota.
In your first year.
My first year. Right?
That's not the first year, that's 10 year running.
So like again, I had no pipeline going into it. I had no anything. I had built it all from scratch, $6 million first year. Or $8 million, and then the second year, of course, that's a fluke, right? The new guy, like 3xing his quota.
Obviously, right.
Same quota, $3 million. I sold 16.
Wow, so you doubled.
So I doubled.
You doubled your past goal, not even your quota.
Yeah. And then, so this year is my third year, and we're in August. I got promoted, by the way, this year. So my quota is now 8 million. I have 3x my quota.
All right, congratulations, man.
So like it was that awesome reaffirmation of who I was as a person that changed everything. And that's when my internal dialogue changed. That's when I realized that like be who you are. And by the way, all I do is problem solve. Like I went back to my core and that creative problem solving. It turns out buyers like it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I'm not out to take anything from them.
For sure.
And I think it's because in today's world, a lot of people like to be told what to do, and so they'll go in, do what they're told to do, and then that's that. But problem solvers, we go in, we do what we're told to do, or what we need to do in some cases, and in most cases, and then do more, because we'll find some type of system. Maybe it's like, wow, this took me too long. And that's what happens with me. Like, things will take me too long, and I'm like, there's got to be a way faster way than this, because it took too long, right? And I think that's what makes the difference between doers and the thinkers, is the doers just do what they need to do, and the thinkers do more than what they need to do.
Right. Or they might do what they need to do in a different way.
Or in a different way.
Right.
Yeah.
So it still accomplishes the same or better outcome, but maybe a hell of a lot more efficiency or more fun.
Yeah.
Right. Because you should enjoy your day-to-day life, right?
Yeah. So, absolutely.
I have a lot of stories about that for another time.
Well, that was a great story.
Yeah, that was a wonderful story.
Well, congratulations on all the successes of late.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We've been talking about a lot of wins, and it takes a lot of failures to get to this point that you're at. And I think it's really cool and inspiring that you kind of just have, found what you're really passionate and good at just by sticking to your path and not deterring regardless of what other people think. And so let's kind of talk about some times that might have been negatively influential for you in terms of other people not wanting to see you succeed or anything like that. Tell us about any failures or any people that you've dealt with that really just didn't want to see you double your quota every year.
I don't think I've met a single person that didn't want that.
There you go.
Even my peers were pretty happy about it. And that stems from I'm always willing to help anyone involved. So I don't keep my success a secret or my techniques. I live in an abundance mindset. But back to failures. Back to the topic at hand. I'm sure I've had many. But I don't actually view them that way, right? Because as long as you learn something, you never really fail. It's just the first attempt.
For sure.
Right? I guess unless you quit. But who's a quitter here?
Yeah.
So I can think of a couple examples. And I won't get too into the weeds because I have to think about NDA stuff here. But I remember being asked to do something before I was in sales. This was a sales ops thing by my mentor. He's like, I need this done. And I was like, it was before I learned how to say no. I was like, yes, I could do that. Absolutely, sir. I got that. And I had to go to him. I worked my rear end off for weeks and just could not figure it out. And so I had to go to him hat in hand and be like, I know I said I could do this and you promised it up the board, but I can't make it work. X, Y, Z reason I can't do it. But I ended up figuring it out several years later, not having been asked. It was just something that always lingered in the back of my mind. You failed.
Yeah.
You failed. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
And,
It's that problem solving.
And
it's the curse.
It was a little bit of luck that there was a change in the tool roadmap for the basis of this solution. And I actually brought it to him years later and was like, hey, remember that thing you asked for that I didn't deliver? He's like, no. And I'm like, well, here it is.
I solved it.
Here it is, jerk. And he's like, thanks. And he actually still uses it today. It's a great thing. But, so really never giving up and just kind of learning is the example or the key takeaway from there. We're all going to fail. We're all flawed creatures, right? And I don't think anyone cares when you fail as long as you're upfront, transparent, learn, and, don't quit.
I like that you said that nobody really cares when you fail, but the talk that you hear inside of your head a lot of times when you fail or make a mistake is the exact opposite of that. And sometimes that voice can be really, really loud.
It can.
So do you have any particular habits or skills that you use to quiet that voice whenever those situations crop up?
I'm going to have this really big hammer at the house that I could... No. Remind yourself what you succeed at, right? And remind yourself that you gave it your best effort.
Yeah.
Is all you can do. You're not a failure because you failed.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that documentation, too, of it, because, most times whenever we fail, we want to just forget about it. And that's really where a massive stepping stone will come from. Because, like you said, you went back to it, and you still were able to figure that out years later. And you benefited from that. You didn't let it just, blow away with the wind. You actually, got better. You sharpened your axe and you went back to fight, and you actually got it done, the second time around or third time, however many times it takes.
Sure do wish he was a little bit more excited about it, though. But no, you're right. And, we'll probably talk about this a little bit later. But when it comes to goals, I always view them as pass-fail. But I'm not afraid to fail them. because
Yeah,
I set my
yeah.
goals loftier than they should be.
Oh,
And you
yeah.
end up failing higher than you would have succeeded if you would set a achievable goal.
It's like Grant Cardone's 10x perspective.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? If your goal is to make $100,000, you should set the goal to be
$1 million.
$1 million, because if you come up short of $1 million, it's going to hurt a lot less than coming up short of 100,000.
And that's for real. I mean, in sales leadership, that's how you set quotas, right? Is like, the quota as a leader might be 100 million, right? But like you got 5 reps, you don't give them each 20. You give them each 25, and the good one 30, to really hedge your bets, because someone's going to fall short.
That makes sense.
Well,
It's a good tip.
Yeah, let's kind of move into the business side of things a little bit. We've talked about the incredible skills that you possess that you've used to help scale a company up to the IPO level and then make an exit. And so let's talk a little bit about that. What kind of problems do you solve in business with the company you work with?
Yeah, so we'll talk about my day job a little bit, and essentially we solve a myriad of problems. I like to summarize it for the sake of time as we're the people. So every business is going to have processes that require manual human effort, right? Even AI companies need human intervention, certainly in the beginning, but generally throughout the process, it just evolves.
Yes.
So that is what we solve. About 50% of our business is digital customer experience, right? Because as you guys know, someone will start a company, and we get to work with like some of the most disruptive companies. So they really started with like 2 guys in a garage, and they figured out this app. Right now they have this ride share thing, and they've got this technology figured out. But what they don't have figured out is how to interact with their end user. So they contract with us to not only do the work, but be that strategic partner to help them build their standard operation procedures and evolve as their business does, right? Because they add features. Now they got food delivery, and now they got this, and that requires different things. I can give an example quickly of like we work with the biggest food delivery company, and when you're staffing support, they work 8 hours a day, but like your volumes are only twice a day. Like you've got lunch and you've got dinner, and other than that, you don't have anything. And so like, how do you keep people busy for 8 hours when you really only have a few hours of busy time? And we were able to kind of leverage best practice in like workforce management to like set schedules and breaks so that we could have as many people on shift as possible for their peak, and then as few off peak and many on peak, and then obviously doing some kind of like ancillary work, like back office stuff. So that's essentially our biggest revenue generator, digital customer service. But we all do some really cool things like content moderation. So like we, for a lot of the social media platforms, are like monitoring for like hate speech or harmful content. Or one of the coolest one we do is like moderating political ads for bias. So that's kind of neat. We also do like what we call AI services, which is what I mentioned before, is that like human intervention to develop AI. And one of the most fun examples I have for that is for self-driving cars. Like we've all seen the ones driving around the road, all the cameras and the LiDAR and stuff. Well, all that data gets fed to individuals to be annotated. So like the cameras, they go like, this is a tree, like this is a car, this is a curb, this is a grandma, like don't hit these. By the way, mother-in-law is an exception in there. It's written.
It's written in the code.
And essentially this gets fed back into the machine learning and teaches these cars how to drive, which are now fully self-driving. Like our employees taught cars how to drive, and those tasks got way more complicated with each iteration. Wow. So like it started like this is a traffic light, but then it was like green, red, yellow. And then we also did like the topographical data, so like the incline of the road. And in San Francisco it was like particularly tricky. So it was kind of fun that our employees got to kind of evolve as well, right? Because they went from doing basic tasks to more complex tasks, and now they can like advance their career because they've done these things. And I know I'm taking too long. So we also do a bunch of trust and safety work, which is like knowing your customer and like validating stuff. And we do a lot of consulting, which is sharing our best practices with like startups that maybe not big enough to outsource but need these processes in place. But we also do the big guys too. So like actually we started working with a social media company, helping them develop a customer journey for like a physical product they were developing and launch. It was kind of cool stuff.
And that customer journey, I like how you kind of ended with that, and even at the beginning you started with customer experience, and those two things are really important to us. They're part of our foundational methods, and two of the things, there's 3 parts that we make it out of, and two of the three things. One of them is retention, and the other one is advocacy. And so in those two things, whenever you're talking about customer service, and even product testing, you are making sure that there is that retention there, that product is being able to be consumed multiple times. And then that advocacy will bring that customer back, right? Reaching out with them with the customer service, giving them a better experience. And some people think it's just about the product or think it's about just the marketing, in our perspective. But in reality, you have to add in that advocacy because it really generates that retention. And without it, you really only have one-time buyers, and you don't really want one-time buyers. You want multiple buyers, you want lifetime buyers, and then you want to upsell them as well along the way. So, I think that's really important for a lot of people to understand, and that TaskUs also has a lot to offer and help, specific businesses answer that problem.
100%. And like the only scenario where that's not true is if you have no competition.
Yeah.
Right?
If you have
the
no
only person in the
competition.
market, then I guess you can just,
Yeah.
customers don't matter. But but genuinely they do. And there's like an operating principle and a ton of studies of the fact that it is like 10 times cheaper for customer acquisition to keep a customer than to go get a new one.
Yes.
Right? So replacing customers comes at a cost. And that's why it's important to like go that extra mile.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. Because in some of our situations with some of our clients, acquiring a new customer is roughly $50 to $80 on the higher end for one of our clients, and then to keep that customer back in, to retarget them and to get them to convert again is roughly anywhere between $12 to $15. So you think about 50 to 80, and then retargeting that person to buy a second, third, fourth, and fifth, and the further they go down the line, the cheaper it gets. In some cases where we have SMS customers, they'll buy their fifth, sixth time, and to convert that customer, it's like 80 cents. But whenever
Under
first
a
to get
dollar.
that under $1, but whenever first getting that customer in, it costs us anywhere between $20, in some cases $80.
And you'd be surprised how many businesses aren't tracking this.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
of course.
Right? I mean,
Surprises us every day.
Yeah.
not to plug you guys too much, but the businesses that fail are the ones that don't think about these things, right?
Yeah.
And I've had a very interesting career, each one with intention. Like you kind of said at the beginning thing where like I've got this diverse tool set, and it came like I don't like to stay in the same industry or job for more than a few years because like you learn those tools and yeah, you can get better at using them, but like I want to have a full box. And so one of my journeys was U.S. Foods. I hope I don't get in trouble for saying the name. I mean, I did work for them, but as a sales analyst. So I was going through and doing like analytics, and you'd be surprised how many restaurants don't know what their line item cost is. Like, so they'll have something highlighted on their menu that they lose money on, and they have no clue. And that's why, like, I think, I can't remember the numbers, and I don't want to misquote them, but it's a lot. It's like 1 in 3 businesses, or 1 in 3 restaurants make it past 1 year,
Right.
and only in 1 in 10 make it past 5.
That's crazy.
Well, and on your point, I think, describing the benefit that you got out of a personality test, I would almost say if anybody's interested in starting a business, like it would be really key early on to take that personality test to understand where your strengths and weaknesses are. So that way you can delegate those things out.
100%. And like, so that was part of the course that we took with this guy, which by it's called Method Teaming. His name's Marcus Hartwood. You guys look him up. He's amazing. I actually ended up hiring him to do some executive coaching for me because he was fantastic. But it kind of taught us like who we are and how we think, and then how to work with the others. And it went down to specific, like if you're working on a sales proposal, at this point of the proposal, you need it primarily these types of people working on it. And like sales, it was funny. Sales was only at like the beginning and the end, right? In the middle, you needed those PDs to like actually do the work. Not that salespeople don't do work, but like,
they just sell the work, of course.
Yeah.
They sell the work.
They sell the work.
Which is work.
Which is work.
Which is
yeah.
a lot of work.
You
in some
can't sell
cases.
and do the work because then you're going to be run up a wall. Doesn't make sense.
Right. I mean, I guess you really shouldn't.
You really shouldn't. You really shouldn't. And even because there was a point in time where, I was in that position with Realize the Market. And whenever we first started, I was selling the work, doing the work, making the branding, doing all this stuff. And it just never really got anywhere. I mean, the first year it was terrible. It was pulling teeth, I think we, did, underneath $15,000 for the year. And, once I brought somebody else on to come in and help and stuff like that, that's whenever we were able to go from, less than 15 to 100K. And we did that, within a year's difference. So that help, it makes a big difference because you can now focus on the bigger picture.
And it's actually something I've seen a few CEOs struggle with more than anyone else, because they kind of want to have like the whole organization roll up to them and they want to own everything.
Oh yeah.
But it's not until you like expand your C-suite and your like executives and trust them to do their job, right? You need a COO to oversee operations. You need like a chief sales officer to oversee sales, because that's its own ugly animal, right? And you need like a chief customer officer making sure all that stuff's taken care of, and then you have IT and
Customer
people,
service,
right?
Customer service.
That all need their own, and chief marketing officer is another thing. Like as company grows and as they're smaller, you can kind of like have people wear multiple hats, but it's really important to know you shouldn't do everything.
Yep.
Like, because then if you stop for any reason, nothing gets done, right? And we all get sick. We all take vacation, or we should.
Yeah, for sure.
And see, and that's something that we've been practicing a lot this year, is making sure that we do take time off. And if, I were to take time off for a week, the company doesn't go under. Things still get done. If Zakk takes a week off, which recently he just did, and he comfortably did it, right? Whenever he came back to work, it's not like he came back with a pile of work to do. Everything was already completed, and he just picked up where he left off, or picked up where we left off. Super simple. And I think that documentation is what really helps us there, grow, because we document everything, every little task that we do. We use Monday.com, and we just document.
Monday.com, by the way.
So amazing.
Yeah,
so
not a sponsor.
Yeah, not sponsored. Yeah, they can if they want, though.
Give us a call.
Yeah. So it's good that you guys are doing that, because like most companies don't learn that lesson early enough, right? But you have to have that trust for each other, and then like, you have to step up, right? And when he's out, you've got to do more than you normally did, and like vice versa. But the fact that you have that relationship and that the staff to kind of carry the load, that's huge.
Right. Yeah. Well, we talked on like retention and stuff a little bit, and I think that is super important. And I think that's something that really separates Realize the Market from other competitors in our industry, is how much we really care about advocacy and retention. And it seems that the company you work with, that's a huge primary goal for them, and they do it really well. Yeah, especially considering how fast you guys have grown. Obviously, you guys are great at what you do, but is there any why would a business owner or professional want to work with you and your company opposed to somebody else out there?
No, that's an easy answer. So I described this as we're the people, and we're not the only business doing this, right? Like customer outsourcing is huge, and we have a lot of competition, big and small, like multi-billion-dollar companies, and then smaller entities, and very few people or very few competitors, not to use the same word too many times, take their people, their well-being into consideration. So we actually, because we never set out to be a BPO, it kind of just worked out that way as we started. Well, I'll tell you that whole story another time, but essentially because we never started to be that way, we put our front line first, like in every decision we make, including how we IPO'd. We actually did a structured IPO so that our founders could keep control of the company for 7 years, to make sure that any business decision made only positively impacted our front line and not negatively impacted. And it's our assailing principle that happy employees equal happier customers. And we actually measure this on a semi-annual, quarterly for employees and semi-annually for customers. And we do it via Net Promoter Score surveys. You guys familiar with how those work?
I'm familiar.
All right. Well, just for the listeners' benefit, in case, you've probably been a part of one a number of times. You see them all the time. It's like a scale from 0 to 10. How likely are you to recommend this to your friends, family, coworkers? Whatever the question is, it's just how likely do you recommend? And essentially, you take the percentage of promoters, which are the people that give you a 9 or a 10, and you subtract the percentage of detractors. Anyone gave you a 0 to 6. That's 7 or 8. They're called passives, and they just affect the percentages. They don't actually help you. So when you're taking one of those surveys and you don't want to give a 9 or a 10, you're a jerk, unless you genuinely feel that way. So you do that, and it'll give you a score somewhere between positive 100 and negative 100, right? And all the really, really cool, innovative startups, the Snapchats, the Facebooks, the Googles, who we kind of hold ourselves with, they advertise it being in like the high 50s and whatever, and then people in our industry are lucky to break the negative numbers. Because it's actually kind of hard, right? And especially keeping your employees happy when you look at them as a commodity, right? They work in an office that's 50 shades of beige, right? They make almost no money, so that you can give like bargain basement prices, right? Benefits are slashed because that's a line item. So it's hard to do. And we keep our scores above 60. Like, I'm going to be kind of vague because they've gone up and down a little bit through the pandemic, right? They actually skyrocketed at the beginning of the pandemic over 74,
Wow.
which we were astounded because it's how we handled that process, right? We made sure that, like, they weren't afraid for their jobs, their livelihood, where they were trying to figure out this, like, global issue in not necessarily, like, first world countries, right? So above 60. And then our customer score has always been within 1 or 2 points, usually above our employee net promoter score, and that is amazing. And the fact
phenomenal.
that we've kept that high as long as we've been doing those surveys, which has been 4, if not 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sounds like you guys are definitely at least paving a way for how a company could be ran. And times are, changing so much so fast because of the pandemic. I think people are starting to work from home a lot more. And if you can't give people the freedom to execute whenever they do best, because people know themselves the most, it's like you're going to get a lot of subpar work, and people aren't going to be excited to show up to that beige colored office every day. And
Well, ours aren't, to be fair. Like, ours, we have some of the most beautiful, like, Instagrammable offices I've ever
There you
seen.
go.
And that's not,
Love it.
like, that's not for any other reason than, like, why not, right? And we
Yeah, right.
actually take the employee wellness into how we design. So they're, like, they're really cool looking, but for a reason. So we actually have, like, psychologists that help us design our office to make sure that it's a positive environment. So it's kind of cool. We'll have, like uneven tactile floors, like rocks on the floor, because apparently, like, when you leave your workspace and you do that, it kind of takes you out of your lizard brain. So that you kind of exit work mode and enter human mode by doing that. And, like, the colors we keep around. Well, actually, in one of our sites, we actually have a ball pit.
Oh, cool.
That's awesome.
And another one, we have, like, a slide, and that's kind of, like, just for fun. But I'm sure there's a psychological reason as well.
Yeah. I think tapping into that childlike behavior in a way is very important to keeping you creative and excited about what you're doing. I think if you can't tap into that childlike mentality and some sense of the word when you're performing work, then it's going to be really hard to really find enjoyment out of what you're doing.
That, and there's other things we do too that kind of go above and beyond. So, like, every single one of our sites has a gym that you can use as long as you're not on shift. Like, literally, if you wanted to come in on your day off and work out, you could. And they're all, like, high quality gyms, but they also have free childcare. And it's not meant to be like a primary childcare, but, like, your sitter calls out sick, or, mom's supposed to watch the kids, but she's got to go to the hospital with dad or whatever. You can bring your kids to the office, no charge, and it's run by actual teachers, like licensed, certified teachers. So you've got an option. But also, like, there's people that have to work on Christmas in these call centers, and they'll just bring their kids in the office and, like, celebrate Christmas because they've got a place to put them where they have a lot of fun, and, like, nutrition is taken into account. That's another thing we do in all of our sites. Is every single one of our sites offers healthy meals for just a donation. And, like, every quarter, the employees vote on what charity to donate all that money to. So they get a healthy lunch for just, like,
So cool.
a small amount. And it's those things that make them feel better about coming to work. And it also makes a positive impact in their local community. And just not stuff you see everywhere.
I agree. Those are some really good ideas and some things that, even I think we could get inspired by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we don't keep any of it a secret, right? We want our competitors to do these things. Like,
Of course.
it is a differentiator for now, but, like, you've got the recipe for the best bucket in a sinking ship. Like, why are you going to keep that bucket to yourself, right? Or,
Right.
Isn't that Elon Musk quote?
Yep.
All right. Well, that's like Alex said, I think, not only us, but people can get a lot of inspiration out of that. I think your environment is incredibly important. Again, circling back to what we were talking about, controlling what comes into your head starts with, what does your environment look like? And I love that. So I think we can, let's talk a little bit more about sales now, because you've definitely done a lot for this company over the last 3 years. And that's, man, to go from, not really selling anything to doubling your sales quota every single year within the last 3 years is just really mind-blowing to me. So through that process, can you give us 3 things that you've learned about sales that have really helped propel that?
Yeah, to give myself a little credibility, I had never sold, but I've been around sales organizations my entire career, and being in sales ops or running sales ops, I got to see the best and the worst and kind of pick out those best principles, which I think is what led to me being so successful so early on. And if you were to boil it down to three lessons I learned, is no one likes to be sold. You know, you ever walk into a store and they're like, "Hey, can I help you?" And you're like, "Oh, just looking," even though you might be there for something specific, right? No one likes to be sold. So focus on the solution, the person, and the ROI. And you know, I don't keep my secret sauce like a secret. So when I'm doing outreach, I'm not trying to sell the person in an email. Like, here's everything about my company and why you should buy from us. It's like, hey, I'm cool, you're cool, you want to talk? You know, and most of the time people are like, yeah. You know, and you kind of like understand their problem and then focus on like what you can do for them. Like, they know what they can do from you. They got money, you want it. So that's number one. Number two is get to know as quickly as possible. I've seen so many salespeople dance around that thing their customer doesn't want to hear. But if it's going to kill the deal now, it's going to kill the deal tomorrow. Like do it. Tell them, you know, and then either figure out a way around it together or it's not right and move on. You know what I mean? You only have so many minutes in the day or energy units. Like, put them where they're going to make an impact. You know, your product or solution isn't for everybody. And number three is huge, and it's going to surprise the crap out of you. More after this commercial break. No, I'm just kidding.
But first, I love it.
Yeah, so ask for the sale. Like, there's been a ton of research. Only 1 in 3 salespeople will ask for the close. Everyone else, like, are you an order taker or a rainmaker? Like, ask. And they'll say yes or no, but if they say no, you can be like, you know, what's your objection? What's going on? Like, why can't you say yes? And they'll tell you, you know, it's, I don't have budget right now, or I don't have authority to make the decision. And you go, okay, who does? You know, how can we put something together for them? Like, let's do this together. You already told me that, like, if you make this change, you change this number, you become much more efficient, you're getting promoted. So is your boss. Like, let's tell him.
I really like what you said there because, like you said, nobody likes to be sold. And I've kind of been having these thoughts a lot lately, too, is I'm almost even to the point where I'm like, I don't even want to consider myself a salesman. I almost like the idea of being a relationship builder more. And I think starting my conversations off with that intention from the beginning makes it easier for me to ask those hard questions because my intention isn't to just get you to sign this dotted line to make this money. My intention is to build a genuine relationship with you that's beneficial for both parties.
So that's actually what my book is about. We didn't talk about that earlier, but my book is going to be called "Do You Know You're Being Sold?" Right? A Guide to a Better Life, Knowing That Everything is Sales.
Love it.
And
the title.
One of the first chapters is about the negative connotation. Like, nobody wants to have sales person in their LinkedIn. Like, I do, but most people don't. They're like business development or, you know, whatever, customer acquisition. They don't want to say sales because it's like everyone thinks that sleazy used car salesman who's out to like sell you a lemon and take your money and leave town. But if you take away that connotation and realize that you're a relationship expert and you're a problem solver, and it's not this finite mindset of like the buyer or seller has to win so that the seller or buyer has to lose. It's really like, let's figure out how to win together. Like, I've got a product that will make you more successful, right? Realize the market will help you 10x your sales because we use machine learning algorithms and best practices to get you in front of more people and target buyers better. Like, who doesn't want that? Like, you go up to a business owner, like, you want more money? If they say no, okay, buddy. You know? So, like, don't be afraid to call yourself a salesperson. It's a point of pride if you do it right.
I appreciate that because that is something that I deal with a lot. And maybe it's just kind of like the identity of like what a salesperson is, like you said, is the connection to that, you know, not so nice car salesman that's really just trying to win one over on people. But I think slowly that perception is starting to change on a larger scale. What do you think? Do you think that the perception of sales in general is just getting a little less bad?
I hope so. And I think it's people like you and me that make it better, right? You have an encounter with a good salesperson, and I can remember my first one. Like, my parents bought almost all of their cars from this one saleswoman. Her name was Pam Contes at Coulter Cadillac in Tempe, Arizona. She's since retired. But my dad always prided himself on being like the best car buyer ever. And he was right. He taught me a lot about sales.
Negotiation.
But frankly, he got this relationship with a salesperson. She was like, no nonsense. She's like, what kind of car you want? And he's like, I want this. She's like, all right, well, I've got this on the lot. It's this price, no bullshit. Like my cost is this much. I got to sell it for this much to make my commission. Like, what do you think? My dad was like, yes. And he bought like 5 cars from her over 10 years. My first car came from her. And, it's those good salespeople that you encounter that give you a little bit faith in the next one, a little bit more faith in the next one. I hope I'm that for some of my buyers. I'm, fingers crossed.
Well, I can certainly say that maybe not even from a sales perspective, but just from a person perspective, you had that impact on us. So I'm sure you're doing it on a grand scale with every person that you talk to. And maybe not everybody, but we can hope.
I genuinely try.
Yeah.
I mean, I go into any interaction wondering how I can benefit somebody else. And that's, I've seen you guys do the same. You've also had
and I think that's something that I like to stick to, and I call that the level 3 mindset. And so like what I mean by that is, level 1, if my level 1 mindset is, I'm here to help me, and in that term of me helping me, it hurts you. That's what I consider a level 1 mindset. Level 2 is I'm helping myself, but I'm not hurting you, but I'm also not helping you either. That's what I consider level 2. Level 3 is I'm helping me and I'm helping you, right? So that level 3 mindset is understanding how can both parties benefit and bring something to the table. So I like that. I like that way of thinking. It's a wonderful way for us to keep ourselves on our own toes and to make sure that everybody else stays engaged with what we're trying to offer, and vice versa.
It helps you leave the world a little better place than you left it, which
Just
I like.
a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
That's big for me.
Yeah.
So if there was like a specific trait that you could put your finger on, if you were looking to bring somebody onto your team, what's something that you would look out for that would stand out as this is a great salesperson?
Well, there's no perfect mold for a salesperson, right? Yeah. Everyone sees success in different ways, and everyone has, every salesperson has their use, right? If you're a sleazy car lot, then you might need a sleazy car salesman. Mm-hmm. But the one thing you can't ever outwork, that priceless trait, is drive and passion, right? Because that driven salesperson, regardless if they know your product or not, is who you want. We actually changed our hiring profile at TaskUs. We were doing these legacy call center salespeople that had these Rolodexes forever, and they yielded nothing, genuinely nothing, because they couldn't prove value to that Rolodex of people. But instead, we started hiring passionate salespeople. So they had sales experience, but they were passionate, driven, and they wanted to be successful, right? We did that, and then we taught them BTO. And that worked like gangbusters.
It honestly gave me the chills, because what you're speaking of are things that you can't necessarily teach, but I firmly believe that every person possesses those skills. I think it's just about how are you tapping in to access those skills for yourself, and are you letting that be of value to other people? Because when you start letting your skills be of value to other people, then they're going to want to be of value to you.
100%.
Yeah. So what should business owners do to attract that type of talent? Not only attract it, but retain it. Keep it around.
That is really simple. And, it's some people can't seem to figure it out, but it's really easy. Pay them.
Yeah.
The best salespeople are essentially coin operated. They're here for one reason and one reason only, right? So and I've seen too many companies lose sight of that as they grow, right? Because good salespeople make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And they'll make more than the CEO.
Oh yeah.
And that should be okay.
Yeah.
Because no sales, no business, guys. You want to grow, you need good salespeople. And I've watched it every time. Company gets to a certain size and they start shaving comp plans, or they start finding reasons not to pay salespeople because they make too much. Well, they walk out the door like that, because a good salesman has 10 job offers waiting at any given time, right? I'm no exception. I'm full of recruiters. When you're good, that's who they want,
right?
And then all the company's left with is, the worst bottom of the barrel who have no other option. How good are they going to do? So it's pay them.
Yeah. Well, that's an easy enough answer for sure.
Yeah. I mean, that goes for most.
Yeah.
You gotta give some people some skin in the game.
So do you have any advice for entrepreneurs who are starting their business and need to build a sales team from scratch?
Absolutely. So we're talking about from scratch. So we're talking about a startup few people. They're looking for their first, and they're going to build on that.
Yeah.
So you want to find an experienced salesperson who's got that drive we talked about before, because you never want to lose that in the salesperson or sales leadership. You want that drive, right? They're just sitting back collecting a check. They're not going to do you any good. But you find a salesperson who has leadership on their track, because a lot of great salespeople don't want to go above that, because they'll usually make more money than their leaders. And if that's all they want, if they're coin operated, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So you got to find someone like me who wants to go that route eventually. I'm kind of enjoying the individual contributor status right at this moment. But so you find someone who has that leadership and then is willing to put skin in the game. I heard you use that phrase earlier, and I like it. So find someone who's willing to take equity and conditional compensation, like commission or bonus, as their like primary income. Now you got to give them a small base, right? They still got to pay their rent while they're getting started, right? And there's some of that. And you might have to pay the first year guaranteed, and we'll get into semantics there. But you find somebody who's willing to work on contingent, right? Especially equity, because you want them to be invested in your business as invested you are in your business, right? They think the more they sell for you, like that bigger payday at the end.
Yeah.
And I can tell you from personal experience that works.
Okay.
It is a very easy way to keep someone motivated. And if they've got leadership, they'll do well as a contributor, and then you'll bring people under them. They'll teach them everything they've learned about your product, how to sell, and then keep them selling because they want to grow that business and see that equity grow.
Right.
Because, again, salespeople are coin operated if they're good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that kind of like answers my next question of any type of advice that you would have for a young professional who's wanting to start their careers in sales. I think the drive aspect kind of answers one part of that. But
one part of it, and I will tell that person that sales isn't easy. Like, good salespeople make it look easy. So as you're coming in, you're going to watch them. You're like, God, man, that guy's got deals handed to him. Like, no, there was work that went into that. And like, if it was easy, everyone would do it. Right, because it's hella lucrative.
Right.
But I can't tell you the number of like family vacations or holidays I've had to miss out on because I've been in the middle of negotiating a multi-million-dollar contract, or essentially putting together an RFP with, stakeholders in all these different countries, and like the customer wants to start in January 1. Thanksgiving and Christmas are gone, guys.
Right.
And you've got to be willing to make those sacrifices.
For sure.
And it pays off. I mean, because sales is cyclical, and there's downtime, and you do get to play a lot of golf and have a lot of fun, but, you got to be willing to put in the work.
And I think like sometimes like, one thing that I thought about in sacrifice is, I kind of flipped that mindset, and instead of telling myself that it was a sacrifice, I said, this is a choice. This is a choice that I'm making. And they changed from sacrifices to understanding that the choices that I'm making are putting me in more control.
And you go a step further and call it an investment.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, because, you only really get paid when you win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not going to win if you don't show up and make that time investment.
Right.
For sure.
Right. Yeah, timing is everything.
So
How do you paid?
Yeah. How do you stay motivated when you're selling?
My biggest tool for staying motivated is goal setting, right? Having 5-year goals, 1-year goals, quarterly goals, and weekly goals that all kind of roll into each other. So I start with the 5-year and work my way down, hoping to overachieve and get there faster. And again, we already talked about that 10X rule, where you make lofty goals, because I'd rather fail big than, succeed normal.
Yeah.
So setting those goals is the big tool, because like, you're going to get out of bed and you're going to be like, I'm not going to get here if I don't do this today. Right. And there are days where you don't want to, right? You long weekend or grueling sale that you ended up losing in the last minute, even though you thought you had in the bag. Like, they take a toll. And like we were talking about earlier, you get a lot of no's. So if you had a heavy no day, week, month, year, it's hard. So keeping those goals in mind, which tie back to that why we talked about earlier, is how I personally stay motivated. I'm sure others have various means.
Yeah. And I think really honing in and focusing on your goals and keeping them top of mind throughout your entire day is something personally for me that really kind of helps shape my habits and my reality. And one thing that I do that I think is really useful for me, and this doesn't work for everybody, but I have really bad like ADD and ADHD, so my mind wanders a lot throughout the day. So it's really important for me to write down my tasks that I do for the day. But a big part of that is I wake up in the morning and I write my goals first thing when I wake up, which kind of quiets all that nonsense talk in my head at the very beginning of the day and allows me to focus on what needs to get done. And then as I'm accomplishing my tasks that are taking me closer towards these goals that are on a larger scale, I document that. And then at the end of the day, before I go to sleep, I write my goals down again one more time. So that way, it's kind of like one of the last things I'm thinking about when I go to sleep.
Check in with yourself, you know.
Yeah.
You can celebrate your wins or remind yourself what still needs to get accomplished tomorrow, because tomorrow's the end of the day.
For sure.
Yeah.
And that's, for me at the beginning, developing that habit was super powerful in me getting on the right path and growing on a positive trajectory. So what are some vital habits that help you achieve your goals?
Accountability is probably the biggest one. So I do my goal setting with a business partner and my brother to kind of like hold each other accountable. Like they'll be like, dude, you can do more than that, or you know, is that really achievable? And that one I don't really that question I don't care too much about. But
so you're selling yourself.
but genuinely, is accountability is the biggest tool to keeping myself, because we'll check in, and it's kind of fun to help somebody else with their goals too. So like each of my friends, I'll usually ask that question, like, hey, what are your goals? How can I help? Because it feels good. And then I'll share mine, because the more people I can have harping on me, the better.
I think something that's cool from that I like to do as well is whenever I accomplish a task, I write that accomplishment down, and that helps me stay focused and motivated working. Because like I said, the goals that I write are more long-term, 5-10 year projections of not even like where I want to be financially is included in that, but also a lot of like personal things, like where I'm living, what my situation looks like, where my mindset is at. And sometimes those things take a long time to develop into and to achieve. And so how do you stay motivated whenever you're working on a 5-year plan? Because there's so many things that can come up in your life, and in 5 years, like you never know what can happen. So dealing with the unknowns, if something comes in and throws you in a completely different direction than you thought you were headed, like how do you work through that and continue on the path towards your goal?
Well, I'm not afraid to change my goals. So that's one thing where they're not necessarily set in stone, right? With new data, new input, new skills, I think they should be addressed regularly. So my 5-year goals don't necessarily stick for 5 years, and a lot of times I kind of end up being ahead of schedule. But I keep them written down. And one thing we didn't talk about before, and I'm glad you touched on, is goals should not just be professional.
Yeah.
Like you should never have more than 3 to 5 goals, right? And there should be a professional goal, a personal goal.
Yeah.
And
I got 5.
I think maybe, I don't know if spiritual is the right word, but genuinely like your relationship with the universe should be considered. And I say 5 because you might double up. You might have 2 professional goals or 3 professional goals. You might have 2 personal goals. For me last year, it was gratitude. And having goals like that. So that was my 1-year goal. It wasn't a 5-year goal, but it was like express gratitude towards 3 people every day.
I love that.
It was really hard the first couple of weeks, but after I did it, it was like, well, 3 became 5.
Yeah.
And, 5 became 10, and now it became like every interaction. And
it's
like
a habit.
It's 2 years later, and like I figured out that gratitude is the shortest path to happiness. Go figure that out. And so how to stay motivated is one, not focusing on just one thing, right? So if you just have your professional goals, like other things are going to fall short. Like you're going to have start problem with your relationship, your family, your connection with the universe, those things you aren't focused on.
Right.
And that will take away from what you were 100% focused on, and then you're going to lose sight of your goals, or it's not going to matter as much. And I guess connection with the universe can also be like your physical body too,
For
right?
sure.
Like taking care of your body is important. That was one of my goals last year, and it's worked out pretty well.
Yeah. Like nutrition, what you eat, what you
Right,
consume.
what you eat, right?
How
So
well you
even what you
sleep.
watch, what you watch and reading,
That's a big one.
Yeah.
And with like these streaming wars and like this massive amount of content,
what
it's
I was-
hard.
Yeah, that's what I mean by controlling and moderating what you let in. And I'm talking all the way down to movies, music, streaming, your friends, the advice you take in. Like, it all needs to be monitored.
Yeah, because it kind of like ends up like affecting how you talk to yourself.
For sure.
You know, you don't think about watching Game of Thrones affecting how you're talking to yourself, but like you might like
Subconsciously it does.
you know, it might eat away the like, why am I doing this instead of accomplishing a goal, or it might be, you know, associating too much with a character and that character seeing a demise, and then all of a sudden you've got to like, oh man, is that going to be me?
Well, when you find yourself having those types of thoughts crop into your head, how do you work through those roadblocks?
How do I work through those roadblocks? One is identifying them. So that's a huge thing, and that requires help. Like, I'm very fortunate to have an amazing partner in my wife, and we haven't really discussed her much through this podcast, but she's kind of the answer to a lot of the questions you've asked with me kind of saying indirectly, where, you know, she'll talk about, hey, your energy is really heavy, or, you know, you look like you're worried about something, and then I'll talk about the problem that's like occupying way too much of my mind. Like, why am I thinking about work at 2 a.m. when I should be asleep? So identification is like number one. And then number two, kind of figuring out, is it really an obstacle, or is it like fear that's standing in your way? You're afraid something's going to happen.
Right.
A lot of times it's a real obstacle. Sometimes it's fear. And then you figure out, okay, is this something I can go around, go over, or am I going to have to go through? Because I'm sure as hell not going to let it stop me. Right? Like, I am the juggernaut. I am unstoppable. That's like part of my internal dialogue, right? Like, and so I guess it stems back to the real answer to your question is internal dialogue, how I talk to myself.
I love it. So if you could give one piece of advice to an entrepreneur, what would it be? Maybe somebody who's just starting out, who just started a business. What would you tell them?
I'm happy to answer this one, and I'm going to give Alex the credit for helping me develop it. Alex, the founder of the company I work for now, have something in common that I've seen be very successful for an entrepreneur, and that's never stop learning, right? This guy reads every book he can get his hands on, and same with the other successful founders like Z, consuming content and then partnering with people to learn, right? I'm sure Alex has learned a lot from you. You've learned a lot from Alex. Like, never stop learning.
Yeah.
And I can chime in on that too a little bit, because I like how you said like partnering. So one of our co-founders, his name's Joshua Europe, and he was at the start was one of my mentors. And over the years, you know, we just became friends, right? He saw the things that he was teaching, you know, myself, and that I was then teaching the team. We were actually implementing, and we were getting results from it. And I was going back to him, and I'm like, hey, look at these results that we achieved, you know, on some things that you showed me. And he's like, that's amazing. And he was able to see that work ethic. And then finally I went back to him and I said, hey, I want to do a mastermind with you, like actually do some crazy one-on-one. And, you know, we went forward with that. And I was actually showing him some deals that I was doing, and he wasn't necessarily helping me, but I was just showing him and just walking him through it. And then he saw that work ethic. So he saw that we could generate the results and do the work, but then he saw how quickly we could do it. And he was like, I want you to come and help me with a couple of these other deals that I have. And I was like, okay. And then, you know, we started working together a little bit, and he was like, I want to be a part of your company. I want to be a part of your team. And that happened. And, you know, he brought in some pretty big deals, and, you know, now we're talking with some pretty big companies right now because of that. And that all came from just, you know, partnership and just wanting to learn, right? Just learning and being able to get a partnership out of that.
And I mean, so boiling that down, you learned from each other. You started learning from him, and then he realized that there was a lot he could learn from you.
Oh yeah, because he's super fast paced, you know, and I'm patience is one thing that I've practiced, you know, over the years, and that's something that he lives in Hollywood, and he's super fast paced, and some of those things, you know, he's like, you know, some of the deals we're in together, and I'll be like, hey, you know, I'll send him a text message. I'm like, just slow down, like, let's just let them talk for a second, like, let's hear what they have to say, let's get their problems first, like, just let them talk for a little bit, you know, and then we'll be able to go from there. And it's just worked so many times, and, you know, we'll get off the call and he'll be like, Alex, you were totally right. He was like, that definitely helped, like, thank you so much. and he'll do the same for me, you know, and he'll be like, hey, like, let's not, you know, go too in depth with that yet, you know, we're not quite there, stuff like that. So it's nice.
I mean,
hold each other accountable.
That happened to us today. You know, I wanted to jump the gun on sending this email out, and he was like, well, hold on, let's just slow down, you know, and that patience, like, it's super vital. And it's good to have that accountability within your circle, you know, like you were touching on a little bit earlier. Accountability, especially for me, was super key to at least keeping my head focused on where it needed to go. And keeping the right people around you for those purposes is incredibly important. And we haven't really talked about, what type of people you should keep around you when you're trying to start a business, but maybe if you have some thoughts on that.
I do. And accountability, I'm going to start with, because I have a thought there, is difficult. And if you want it, you have to give it too, which is hard because some people don't like it.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, you said you wanted to get this done. I mean, I won't call anyone out specifically, but there's this one really close friend of mine who's trying to get something done, and I'm like, hey man, like you said you wanted to get this done, like, you haven't done this or this, like, how can I help? And we sat down in his kitchen and like we kind of like made significant progress towards it, and it was time I didn't have, but he's someone I really care about, so we did it. And so you have to give it to get it, I think. And I can't tell you the number of times that same person's held me accountable. So it really felt more like we're paying the favor. And then I totally forgot your question was it's who to keep around you when you're trying to start business.
How do you identify the right types of people? Things like that.
I don't want to sound judgmental because all people have a place, right?
Of course.
But when you're trying to start a business, you need to surround yourself with other people that have done it and are trying to do it. It's my belief that you should always have and be a mentor. It kind of stems back to that always learn, and like one of the best ways to learn is teach, right? It kind of reinforces lessons and helps you figure out and see things from a different perspective. Right. So you should surround yourself with people who have done what you're trying to do and are doing what you're trying to do. 100%.
Yeah, I think people leave that out too, is finding that mentor. It's like if you want to become something, find somebody who's done it and you'll become it. And a lot of people just like are scared about that because maybe they don't want to share their ideas. They have something that somebody hasn't thought about. But I mean, there's a lot of wheels that have been invented, and it's hard to think about something that hasn't been thought about. So, don't be scared to get out there and to find other people who've done it and communicate with those.
And people like to share their successes, right? That makes them feel good. I have never encountered somebody, and you can't just come out and say, like, hey, be my mentor, but you can start asking them questions. Like, hey, I saw you did this, tell me how, or, what can I take? I mean, they'll just end up mentoring. You kind of like trick them into it. Because when you say like, hey, we'd be mentor, they're like, that's a time commitment. I don't know if I want to do that.
Right.
But yeah, just surround yourself with people who have already done what you're trying to do. Stalk them a little bit, figure it out, get in their network. But everyone likes having friends, especially if you have something to contribute.
For sure. Well, I love it, man. I think we've had a really good conversation, pulled a lot of really, really useful and insightful knowledge out. If there's any closing thoughts that you might have, or anything you want to promote or share, maybe the book that you and your brother are working on, if there's literally anything, go ahead and share it.
No, I mean, I think I've covered enough to get people interest, and then we're going to do a pretty aggressive go-to-market strategy. So I won't spend too much time plugging myself, but I will actually offer something. Like, if anyone wants to reach out and ask me questions, like, find me on LinkedIn, hit me up. If you know Zakk or Alex, they'll give you my number. But I really do, put my money where my mouth is in, like, being and having a mentor. Like, if someone wants to ask me about sales, or whether or not to go back to school, or I'm a father of 4. The oldest is 22 and the youngest is 14. So you got a parenting question, I'll tell you how to diaper. It's cool, man.
Love it. I'm gonna take you up on that offer one day.
Yeah. Well, there you go, everybody. Jeramie Parsons on LinkedIn. Go hit him up. Maybe he'll watch your kids for a little bit.
Oh, and Jeramie's actually spelt really weird. It's Jeramie. Thanks, Mom.
There you go. All right, that's it. Thank you for Realize the Market. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks you guys for having me.